Welcome to Business Notes. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, President of Performance Strategies and Diane Bogino Development. Our guest today is Michael Moore. Michael serves to help business owners find the resources they need at Club E, helping organizations with finding the right banking relationship or to build out your team. He is the Chief Experience Officer and a stakeholder in Global Podcast Studios and the Podcast World Tour. He is a Rainmaker and Chief Storyteller with Results Atlanta, where he provides and develops personal introductions to business owners and community leaders. Michael mentors unique relationships and lessons for individuals, weekly, monthly, and quarterly. The group was designed to provide a forum for connections and the ability to learn, profit, and mature from the experiences of others through making connections and introductions. Michael, welcome to Business Notes, and thank you for being on the show today.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you today. I'm excited about sharing some information with you. It will be fun and hopefully great for the audience.
I think it will be. And first, I also want to thank you for your service to our country. And start off, Michael, I'm not sure that everybody, including myself, knows exactly what a Rainmaker is. So could you define that, because that's what you're known as?
Well, yeah, number one, a lot of people go, what does Michael Moore really do? And then what does Rainmaker really mean? Well, a movie back in the 90s called Rainmaker. And it was basically about the attorney who was part of the firm who had connections to make things happen. And so those connections to make things happen are not a gift that most people have. They don't, as Harvey McKay would say, they don't dig their well before they need it. And I spent my time here in Atlanta, which is 46 years. And prior to that, 3 years in the military. Prior to that, 18 years or so being a kid. And in the middle of that, I had the college time where I really spent time getting to know people and figuring out how they might serve each other. And that is really what a Rainmaker does from my vocabulary. In addition to that, I'm also part of American Indian, as we say. I'm not Cherokee. I'm Creek. I'm Southern Creek, Lower Creek as it's called, which is basically the folks who founded Coweta, who were the folks who allowed General Oglethorpe to stay in Georgia.
Wow.
So rainmaking and storytelling is important to our Native Americans, and so very proud of that heritage. It's a small part, but it's actually back from the 1830s, which is kind of a good time to be.
Yeah, we were both there, right?
Right. My great-great-great-great-great-grandfather he wandered through Marthasville and went all the way to Montgomery, and then came a few clicks back, as we would say, to the Opelika, Auburn area, Tuskegee area, and actually was gifted his hero's bonus, which was 4,000 acres of land in what was then Western Georgia, and then became Alabama.
Wow. And you are now currently involved in several podcasting ventures. Tell us, our viewers, a little bit about those.
First of all, I can easily name those, and I'll give you a little bit of ideas. First of all, there's Pro Business Channel, which is our original. Rich Casanova, my associate, and I'm a stakeholder in that organization, started a podcast group in Buckhead 5+ years ago. And then around 4 years ago, he changed the model to be Pro Business Channel, which is actually a network of about 16 different podcasts we've had over the years. We still have 2 visionaries and influencers, and we have the Georgia podcast, which serves the Buckhead Business Association as a housing for our members there. Then also we have the Global Podcast Studios, which we got into the process last year in 2019 of renting studios not only through Atlanta but around the country to help people start podcasts. We run a podcaster's masterclass and teach people how to do that. And then last year in 2019 also, we started a group called the Podcast World Tour, which actually has the benefit of a nonprofit behind it, which is basically trying to help one more child here through cochlear implants and through training so that we can have one more podcast listener. And then most recently, just in July 4th of this year, we launched something called the Podcasters Directory, which allows us to match podcasters and guests together, because it's one of the toughest things to find quality guests. And, I'll be a quality guest today, hopefully, Diane. So those are the things that I do in the podcast world.
I'm not worried about that one bit. So if somebody wanted to take your master class, where would they go to sign up?
We have been issuing about once a month. We're now looking at how we do it on Zoom better. We've been on a hiatus since, February, I think, was our last class. But they just sign up online. You can go to podcastersmasterclass.com, I think it is, but I'll I'll put that in your show notes. I don't know the official address and the next date, actually, because we're looking to turn it over to Zoom and actually make it more of a webinar.
Okay. Oh, great. So, okay, we'll be looking for that then. Super. So, Michael, with everything that's going on, and obviously even you're making changes in some of your business models, what do you think the new business normal is going to look like?
Well, it's a very simple process for me. I think that I was just on a podcast this morning with one of my associates listening to another associate's podcast. They released every Monday. And we were talking about the freemium process, getting people into your funnel. We were also talking about the capabilities of building your database before you need it. And a lot of people have wasted this time or misappropriately used this time of the last, call it 6 months. We're almost in September now, tomorrow. And we started this in March. And if you didn't have a good plan when March started, you probably didn't get a better plan in April. You were so confused in the middle of March as we locked down. But the folks who've been studying marketing and understanding what they needed to be doing and changing their model during this time, repositioning their sales folks, establishing their processes and procedures, those are the folks who are going to win in the new normal, whatever the new normal is. I just think we're just in an evolutionary change. I'm not going to call it the new normal. But building your database and maintaining the methods by which you do business is so important. And people hopefully have been doing that and not just taking time off to play with their dogs and do Fortnite or whatever they do.
Well, speaking of that, you, through your coaching and mentoring, you help people do that, I would imagine. So can you talk a little bit about your coaching and mentoring process? And I think you do it monthly, quarterly, weekly. How does that work?
Well, I'll take credit for doing something every day, if you don't mind. This morning, as I said, I've already had one call with a podcaster that was at 7. I had another podcaster I sit on the advisory board, and I'm helping recruit 5 new board members, and we'll bring them on board in September to take care of an international relief organization. My July activity, I just put it back in perspective. I hosted about 60 people to have a celebration of an entrepreneurial club that I've been participating in 8 years. Looking at 110 members of an entrepreneurial club and ministering to their needs or coaching them to their needs or mentoring them to their needs. And I'm not going to get into the discussion of which one equals which, but the key fact is there are people who need information which they don't have. And you asked a question about Rainmaker earlier. I really prefer the term now of connector, because it was back in 1999 when I coined that phrase, Rainmaker and Chief Storyteller. And really it was because I was being hypocritical. I was talking to people about what they should be doing, and I realized I wasn't doing it. The same thing applies today. We are looking at things we don't even do, and we're expecting our mentees or our coachees or our whatever they are to do things that we're not willing to do. And that's really the mark of as you said earlier, thank you for recognizing my veteranship. I learned leadership as a farm kid. I actually learned leadership in college. I actually learned leadership in the military, in the business arena when I was in the banking industry, leading groups. It's not easy. I tell people, say, what's your toughest job you've ever had? Well, in the banking industry, I had 700 women full-time, aged 18 to 66, and 1 college part-time male student. That's leadership, because being thrown into that kind of cauldron is tough. And sometimes the tough cauldrons you're in kind of make you the frog that didn't boil. And I think I'm the frog that didn't boil.
My goodness, that was a lot of people for sure. And so you were in the banking industry, correct?
I was.
Yes. And go ahead. What were you doing?
I was
Sales?
just going to say a little over 5 years. I came out of the military back to Georgia in 1975 and served in the banking industry from 1981 until we decided we weren't going to be statewide bankers and we weren't going to be able to grow past our borders. And I was already an entrepreneur. I owned a business. My wife and I owned some retail stores. So I left banking and became the entrepreneur and, of course, a sales coach. I got involved with Digital Equipment Corporation, helping set up new organizations to sell mini computers to accountants and small manufacturing. So it's a very interesting ride and walk as I maintained the business through the 80s and through having children being born and so forth.
Mm. So speaking of leadership and coaching, do you have a particular niche? I mean, here you can do sales, you can do leadership, you can help people grow businesses. Tell me, what is it that you focus on particularly?
My most fun thing to do is to work with a business owner who doesn't have a brother-in-law or a banker or an attorney or an accountant who tries to help him or her. I'm working right now with two female entrepreneurs who are working in the industry niches of technology, and both of them need, well, as I say, I help business owners find resources they don't know they need yet, and it's looking at their business and it's being trusted. Back to that trusted advisor, if you don't know, like, and trust someone, you're not going to do business with them. I really have never had problem with people trusting the results that we're going to get together. And I like it, make it a dual asset. So to make sure that we do the right things.
That's interesting that people don't know what they don't need in business when there's so much information out there today. But I think everybody thinks their business is unique and can't really see the forest for the trees, would you say?
Well, many people are confused about the sources of information, and many people don't really know how to, what's the term I'm looking for? They don't really know how to sift through the information to get the right solution that they need. That was one thing that made me successful in the mini computer industry time in the 80s, before PCs became so prevalent, is that folks did not really understand that transition between going from no records that were duplicatable and easily understandable without a lot of work to information at your fingertips. And you're right, we have the internet, we have information at our fingertips. However, most people can't get their fingers close enough to the information to understand it and to use it. They can't pick up the pencil. They keep looking at the pencil, looking at the paper, or looking at the big screen, and they just don't get the right answers.
Well, I think you make a good point too, that there is so much information out there that it is difficult to sift through and know what's right for your business, I suppose. And that's where somebody like you comes in. What would you say is the biggest mistake that small business owners make?
Wow, biggest mistake. Well, it's a pretty simple business acumen. They don't have a good attorney. They don't have a good CPA. They don't have a good coach. And they may or may not have a good, well-trained staff that can help them take some time off for doing it right.
I noticed you didn't mention money in there.
Money? Well, a good business is going to produce revenue, and the bankers will seek you out.
Right.
Bankers are good resources, and many people fail to neglect them. I guess, maybe you could put banker number 1 or you could put banker 10. It's really not that important. The main thing is you have a complete team. Complete team is going to make a difference in your success, because if you don't have a center or you don't have a quarterback, the ball's not going to move no matter how good the line is.
You're right. So in closing, Michael, what advice would you give someone who is starting a business?
Wow. Get a banker. No.
Well, definitely you've got to have some backup resources in terms of money to get the things you need, for sure. A coach is not going to work for free. That's one of the things you said they need, right?
Well, I think the appropriate process is if you have a product and you have a niche and you have a team, and that team, of course, is the professionals that support your business, which you need to have. You can't do things by yourself. And they are typically employees and or support and or advisors. It's a three-legged stool. It really is. You got to have a product, you got to have a team, and you got to have a plan. And that plan has to work with the resources you have. Otherwise, you're going to be constantly adjusting. I mean, looking at chemical companies right now, for instance, just packaging sanitizers. Looking at distilleries. For a few weeks, everybody thought, oh, well, the distilleries are going to be producing hand sanitizers. That only lasted about a month. Getting General Motors to make ventilators, that was kind of crazy. We didn't need that many ventilators, but we did need people to look at business differently. And so many new businesses have been developed out of this idea, and so many people have changed their angles a little bit. I mean, right now, I don't think we need too many more textile sewn masks, because everybody pretty well has one or two. But we still need a lot of paper masks because disposable masks are still important for what we are about. But there's a little bit of personality. So that niche has now been filled. Now we need to look at more niches that need to be filled appropriately. And that's where business growth is going to occur. And being part of that's fun. Well, I guess one other thing is I'll make a big plea for and the mastermind process. You don't always need to be working with just the people in your small circle. You need to have a larger circle. As we talked about earlier, the podcast mastermind class, you need to have a mastermind of 5 or 6 people that aren't your brother, aren't your spouse, aren't your banker, but that you can have in confidence so that they can give you information which you're afraid to realize may be real. And then they need to help you synthesize that information you've got from somewhere else that may be real. Because sometimes it's lonely in making decisions. And sometimes you can make the bad decision by not taking enough time. And sometimes you can make the bad decision by taking too much time. So moving through that process is the most important thing we can do for each other.
All right. So I hear you talk about in that answer a lot of adaptability that people need to do, which we've done since time began. But it seems like people don't know that they still need to do that. And the other thing is about getting other minds, if you will, interested in your business, because there's too much emotion associated with friends and family when we start talking about things like that, I think.
Well, and I will, if I could just circle back for a moment, the think tank approach. It doesn't have to be a mastermind, and it doesn't have to be very regular. I have the pleasure over the last 26, 27 weeks of running a kind of a think tank group back as evolutionary thought. Gosh, who would I like to be trapped with in a thinking room if I was going to be isolated? The week before COVID, back about mid-March, we were able to pull 16 people together, and they were of like mind, but of different thought processes. The loud and boisterous, the quiet and the sublime. And we've been meeting now for 25, 26 weeks, every Wednesday, 10 a.m. to 11 a.m. No real commitment and process other than dedicating that time and come with an open mind, as well as come with the information you've learned. And, looking at podcasts has been one of the things we do because we all gather our information, whether it's from a book or a podcast or television, or just stopping and taking time to think about what the opportunities are, what the possibilities are, and looking at things just a little different. Remember, the space shuttle is off target 99.9% of the time, but the fact is that last adjustment. My father used to have a great saying, Confucius say, trip of 1,000 miles begin with first step. My father said, it ends after last turn. That step is where the trip ends. So we're always looking at how we make the last adjustment, the final adjustment to get the result that we thought we wanted as we started the journey. So that's where I'll leave us today. Make that last adjustment, get the right resource, be in the right niche, have the right team, and your results will be some you'll be proud of. Because also he said, it's better to have people talk well of your successes during your life than at your death or your funeral.
Great advice. Michael, thank you so much for being on the show today. I look forward to more interaction with you in the future and learning more from you as you go about putting people together, putting minds together in these think tanks that you do.
Thank you, Diane. It was a pleasure to be with you. I hope that we've put some information out in the circle this morning that people will be able to gather around. And I'm always open. You've got all the information you'll post below, but basically my simple mantra is resultsatlanta@gmail.com. And that's the way to best get to me, and it'll take you all the other places you need to be because I reach out to folks, quite a few every day. And in fact, I got 3 birthday calls to make in a moment.
Great, thanks. Thank you for watching Business Notes. We've been speaking with Michael Moore, a resource for business owners, Chief Experience Officer for Global Podcast, Rainmaker, and Chief Storyteller for Results Atlanta. I'm your host, Diane Bogino, bringing you business ideas you can bank on.